Welcome to ADF Property, the podcast where we talk about all things property investing and real estate for Australian Defence Force personnel. Whether you're looking to build and scale a property portfolio or relocating across Australia, we've got the insights and tips for less stress and more success. Let's dive in.
Oh, g'day, how you going? It's Phil Tarrant here, stepping in with Kane Dury for the ADF Property Podcast today. Kane, how you going? You well?
Very well, Phil, thanks.
That's good, mate. Well, I know you're offline. We haven't jumped on this podcast with you before, so it's nice to actually come on and have a yarn here.
Yeah, we've had a few co-hosts over the short span we've been going.
Yeah, no, it's really good. And for those people who are tuning in, you might go, oh, that sounds like a bit of a familiar voice. It's a bit of an intersection for me for a lot of the stuff I do in the defence and national security space with a lot of our media brands and platforms around defence industry and cyber and stuff. So it's been a privilege for me to get to know a lot of people who are currently serving in the ADF, and within defence industry, pretty much half the people you meet have been in uniform at some point in time. Mainly quite senior people and all out there, but a lot of them invest in property, which I've always noticed. So I think you putting this podcast together, helping out serving ADF members and also those people who've been through the ADF, our veterans, to capitalise on property investment is a really smart thing, because you guys have got your own sort of unique way about doing business.
We do, and we'll jump into some of those details today and just make sure that anyone out there that's listening knows a pathway for them that's suitable to sort of maximise those entitlements.
Yeah, no, it's good, and it's a lot of stuff, and I apologise in advance for those people who may not have knocked around anyone in the military. There's going to be a lot of acronyms today, and one thing you do know is that people in the ADF and the whole sort of defence infrastructure, they like to shorten everything into an acronym, and most of the time you have no idea what it is, so hold on and strap in. But how's business, mate? What's been happening?
Yeah, business is great. So we've been actually had a few own occupiers, a lot of people relocating from Sydney and Melbourne.
Okay.
So we've had a couple purchasing on the Gold Coast, so that's kept us busy. The podcast is getting more traction, getting more inquiry from the ADF personnel.
Good.
So yeah, it's good at the moment.
Yeah. So remind me, I guess the objective of this podcast is to help those people who are currently serving or have served how to leverage property investment as an asset class. For those people currently serving, is about the sequence of moving through postings and finding places to live and everything that goes along with it. So you're here to help them understand that better. But then also for those people who, it can be beneficial financially inside the ADF. There's lots of grants and stuff. So there's a lot of people actually investing in property as well. So you essentially cover both sides of that as a business, yeah?
Yeah, that's right, as a business. So there's quite a few grants that are tied to the own occupier purchase, but for a lot of people, the own occupier can also be the first step into property investing or building their portfolio. And then there's the defence personnel that are actually actively interested in building a portfolio that we help.
Yeah.
And then I guess the third tier is when they're relocating. So we've got one gentleman at the moment relocating from Adelaide to Townsville, and we've just settled last week. And he won't move into it till early next year, but he's used several grants during that purchase, and it'll form, it's his first property. He'll live in it to meet the DOHAS and HPAS requirements, but he'll post away eventually, and then he'll retain it as an investment.
Okay.
So it's the first sort of piece of the investment portfolio puzzle. So
I would say the key thing with all this, it's probably a big game, and he who knows the rules the best probably is those that does it the best. There's a lot of planning, there's a lot of strategy, there's a lot of sequence to how do you actually leverage the grants available to ADF members, but then also the nuances of working inside the ADF and the way postings happen, and being quite friendly with your commanding officers who can help manoeuvre and prompt you in the right way. And we're bringing a guest into today's show. He's not here to speak on behalf of the Army, but he's works with a lot of soldiers who are leveraging these grants. So it would be good to get some sense from him how it all works. That's Major Ben Vitale. I'll bring you in right now. How you going? Hey, Major, how's things?
Yeah, not too bad, thanks. So, mind the mustache and the beard. I am actually still serving. So,
mate, you wouldn't know you're in the Army, yeah. I'm telling you, just by looking at you. But no, thanks for coming in. And this is the whole thing about how do you actually, you got to know the rules, you got to know the details, and a lot of ADF members aren't aware of what is actually available, and maybe they're not that interested at the moment. They might be just young soldiers out there having more fun than they're not worrying about what their future is. But the more you can understand and comprehend this and work out how to actually use what is available to you, you can do pretty well out of it. But Kane, what's going on up in your Brisbane base or Gold Coast base? How's the market up there at the moment? Because I just saw a news report saying like property prices are still growing rapidly and ridiculously up there.
Yeah, still. So Gold Coast is still very low stock, and so median house price of the Gold Coast is about 1.2 at the moment, and I think the rental yield is still at a healthy 4%. So normally we'd see somewhere with a median price 1.2, like in maybe the mid threes or in the low threes. So it's a very healthy rental market as well at the moment.
Are you enjoying podcasting? Is it something you thought you'd sort of get stuck into?
Yeah, it's slowly becoming less uncomfortable, you say, but yeah, so I don't mind it.
Mate, you know what you're talking about. You know,
Yeah.
it's pretty. You guys have known each other for a little while.
Yeah, we have quite it's 20 odd years now. Like, I know I have this youthful look on me, but
I was going to say,
I was Kane's first boss.
Oh yeah,
back in 2004. End of 2004. So
you're a diesel mechanic.
Yeah, that's right. And Ben was my first lieutenant boss. As he said, they use boss as a pretty loose term in the defence.
Yeah, anyone more senior?
Very loose term for myself. So yeah.
That's what was he like back then? Has he sort of changed much? Still the same bloke?
He's pretty much the same bloke. He's a bit more serious and few more greys in that red hair now.
Yeah.
But no, very very similar, easygoing. I'm a pretty easygoing guy. I have a bit of a fast and loose command style, which fit in for some of the guys that I had up there at the time. So, but yeah, he's always been very knowledgeable and knows his stuff, even though that may not have shown some of the times when we were in the mad cow or the crying council. But,
yeah. God, well, it's funny where people end up, right? With like life after service, and it's good, and you see it right across Australian business. Really capable veterans out there leveraging a lot of those skills and capabilities they learn in the service and deploying it elsewhere. But you're still in. You're 20 years.
Yeah, 20 plus.
A lifer.
Yeah, I left for a little while. They brought me back not really kicking and screaming, but no, I came back in. So we'll see how things go from there.
So you've had probably a lot of deployments over 20 years. It's been a reasonably active sort of time.
I've had a few there, and experienced sort of the spectrums of service, if you will. Being on both sides, have the good and the bad. You're never going to have smooth sailings for 20 plus years, but definitely a lot more ups and downs. Yeah.
So you're here to talk about property and property investment. So whether it's soldiers or ADF members sort of moving through postings and trying to find houses, and I know Kane's business does a lot of help with it, but then also sort of attitudes towards property investment. Is the soldier today very different than the soldier 20 years ago? Are they sort of more focused on this stuff, or are they still, you can paint sort of some loose sort of stereotypes of young soldiers, but
I think they are. Like, back when Kane and I first joined, it was, you get your deployment, you come back, and the amount of HSV Maloo utes that were rocking around Townsville in the early 2000s was pretty crazy. Whereas I think people are a lot more astute these days, but still I have found, I've been on both sides of these grant spectrums. I've had HPAS and DOHAS myself, and obviously being in a command role, I've had to do the admin side of things for soldiers and young officers applying for them. So I do think people are a lot more astute now in defence and that side of things. They are quite aware that we have a lot of benefits. We are on a good wage, a decent wage, but it's just knowing what is out there and knowing who can help you, not just within your chain of command, but obviously there is people like Kane and Discover buyers agents that have that ADF experience and that other experience outside as well.
And this intersection between the realities of being in uniform and then running in parallel with that, people trying to balance their lives and families through deployments, or people trying to look for wealth creation, you probably need someone that's sort of been in the game at some point in time, just really, because if you don't know, you don't know. I wouldn't know. It's a foreign world to me, right?
Yeah.
And that's okay. But I imagine it's pretty important, though, that your boss sort of is supportive of this sort of stuff, right? Like, if you've been playing up and misbehaving, they're probably going to be pretty slow with the paperwork.
Oh, definitely. That's the big thing. That's why you need to be prepared. You don't just go out and buy a house and then go, hey, I want DOHAS and HBAS. Anyone that's done more than, breakfast in the army knows that some of the cogs turn quite slowly. And exactly as you say, if you're out there causing dramas for your boss, that paperwork's not going to go straight across his desk. Especially, as an OC, you can have 150 to 200 people under your command, and everyone's piece of paperwork is the most important piece of admin in the world for them, not necessarily for the OC when he's dealing with 150 pieces of those paperwork on a daily basis. So it is that being prepared, knowing how long the process takes, knowing that, your LT, the OC, they have these other commitments that they have to deal with. So being prepared, planning ahead, and just asking the question in a nice way. Hey, boss, what's going on with this? To make sure.
So as an OC, do you look at a pile of paperwork and just go, "Oh, this is a whole bunch of. I've got to go and check in on the mess to make sure it's looked nice and clean. I don't want to even look at that, right?
Yeah, well,
you've got to be in the right frame of mind to probably tackle that, right?
Yeah, it's still very important to make mornos at the mess 2 to 3 times a week, but to relieve the stress. But definitely, there is that, and knowing not everyone. Not every OC, certainly not every lieutenant, because some of them only been in since breakfast, know how these grants work. Yeah. It's all in Pac-Man, it's all there, but not everyone knows where it exists or how it works. And as a first-time buyer, I've been a first-time buyer myself, I had no idea what I was doing with the grant process for a start, and that was as a lieutenant. And then secondly, actually buying the property from a second point of view. I think buyers agents, especially those with knowledge of defence, are probably more important for a first-home buyer than an experienced investor, because I cost myself, I reckon, 15 to 20 grand on the property price alone with my first purchase, just because I was 21 years old. The real estate agent come and did the old, we've got another buyer, up your offer. So suddenly I'm offering 30 grand more than I originally did in Townsville 20 years ago. So
the market was very different back then to what it is now.
Yeah.
Very different. Yeah.
And then when Kane told me what he was doing with his business, I thought it was a great idea because, and sort of you see it in the military, or you see it in sort of sporting circles as well. Sometimes they align themselves with the wrong type of people who might not have the right intent. You see it particularly in professional sport, right? It's just the local guy who sponsors the football team is the financial planner everyone uses, which might not necessarily be the right guy. Yeah. But I think that particularly holds true inside of the ADF or the military, and I see it sort of have a knock around a bit that area. And messaging for the sort of heads and stuff. Like, one of the key things we need is retention of our soldiers, sailors, and airmen. It's so critically important. So we build this ecosystem and incentives actually keep people in there, but they don't know about it. Yeah. So, if they don't know about it, we've got to concentrate on the education. And it sounds as though that sort of happens in bits and bobs, but it's probably, the obligation of the person who's interested to go out and educate themselves rather than people coming going, this is how it works, this is how it works. So that's why I thought what Kane was doing was really smart, and bringing you in today to actually sort of break it down a little bit. Already I'm a little bit confused by it, but we probably sort of can go through these different grants as a bit of a basing. So there's sort of 4 grants from what I understand, but then it comes back also to the sequence of how you use this stuff and probably the utility of it is really, really important. If you don't know the nuances, you're probably not going to be able to read it all in a book or whatever the manual is around this. You need to get the colour and stuff around it. So DOHAS. What is DOHAS?
Yeah, so DOHAS is essentially a loan that you would get through, and there's for each grant here we're talking about, there's certain qualifying criteria. I'm probably too granular to get into each one and break it all down, but DOHAS essentially is a loan subsidy that you would get, and depending on your level of how many years of service is the level of subsidy that you would get. So if you've done 2 to 4 years, the loan amount would be about 396, and you would get up to 578 of subsidy per month for that. And then 4 to 8 years would be 595,000 with 868 of subsidy. And then 8 to 12 is 793 ballpark with 1,157 per month of subsidy. So depending on your level of service is the tier that you qualify for.
So they'll lend you that much money.
Yeah, so there's only
underwrite it by a particular amount.
So yeah, you can get lent more, but that's all that will be subsidised. That's your cap of what it'll be subsidised up to.
Okay.
So you could get $1 million loan. You've only done 4 years. That will be 400,000 of that will be subsidised, and you will get basically what was that figure, about $500 a month towards your repayments.
Do they pay the loan direct, or they pay you and then you pay the loan? Is that how it works? Like how do you actually get that subsidy?
That subsidy comes into your
comes
pay.
to your bank.
Yeah, so
okay.
it can be form part of your payment, or it can just go into your account. Depends how you set it up.
Okay.
But essentially, there's only 3 banks that you can apply through. So NAB are the one major,
Yep.
and then 2 defence banks, being Australian Military Bank and Defence Bank. And Australian Military Bank are the only one open through the broker channel, so that's important to sort of...
Through mortgage brokers.
Yeah, that's
okay.
right. So that's sort of important to consider when you're sort of looking at, what's my second, third and fourth move in the property journey, is building that relationship potentially with a broker over a banker, because we all know the benefits of a broker.
Yeah. We're not going to get into that, but
No,
we're both
that's
sitting
right.
from the same hymn sheet on mortgage brokers. But I imagine there's not many mortgage brokers that probably specialise in helping out ADF members, right? Or there is?
Yeah, correct. And writing the DOHAS loan through a broker can be clunky as well, because it's it's got that extra degree of complexity to it. But there are good brokers out there that do specialise in it and write enough volume of it to have a very good understanding of that process.
Okay, so that sort of makes it. That's a huge incentive, right? Essentially, you're getting part of your loan paid off.
Yeah, and the thing is, if you have another defence partner, you can both apply for that as well too. So
you both get the
you're both entitled to it. Yeah.
Jesus.
Yeah, or you can. Yeah. So you have to be recognised de facto or married. That's what my ex-wife and I did with one of our purchases.
You both have your own qualifying periods, so
Yeah.
one could be a top tier on there, and one could be a lower tier depending on their level of service.
So is rank irrelevant? It's just time in.
It's just time. Yeah.
Time. Okay. So private gets the same as a general. Yeah. Okay. That's pretty cool.
Yeah.
All right. That's and what's interest rates on that? Is it competitive or is it sharp?
Yeah, it's competitive. The repayments are based on, without getting into the amount of interest, so it's roughly a third up to that amount we mentioned. So 396 for the 2 to 4 year bracket. It's roughly, it works out to be about a third of the interest.
Okay.
So the interest rate does play a factor, and you do have less choice with those 3 lenders. But knowing that level, the higher interest rates are, because it's based on a third of the interest amount roughly, the more beneficial it becomes.
So if I rocked up Mess, sort of where you're based now, Ben, would I hear people talking about DOHAS and HPAS and stuff? Does it get bandied around, or is there sort of conversations sort of in the shadows and it's all quite formal?
No, it does. It definitely does get bandied around. Over the water cooler, if you will, around the office and around the mess where we catch up and have some have a coffee. It definitely is spoken about, and I think it's been spoken about probably more these days because, as we've already said, if you don't know, you don't know what you don't know.
If you don't know, you don't know.
Yeah.
And this is, again, I say there's a huge obligation or maybe a missed opportunity by sort of, the bureaucratic beast that is the ADF to actually work more on education, right?
Yeah,
it's cool.
I think it's a big thing. We are talking more, obviously, as an organisation, we can't offer financial advice because, we don't have the qualifications. But I know with my last posting, we did get someone in to talk just in general terms about basically not wasting your money and investing wisely. And these grants were brought up in that talk. So, but I think it is something that units could bring in every year. People that know defence, or probably most of them, we do induction training. So it's basically a week to 2 weeks where you just do all your courses. It can be quite boring.
Yeah.
There's online courses, there's talks. I think that is something that can be brought in, that discussing these terms, these grants and these terms each year to get that more knowledge.
So it sounds like you're just travelling around Australia doing an education thing for everyone, right? That'd probably help a lot.
Last week we were up in Townsville ourselves. We had an event up there in Burdell, which is a local suburb there that a lot of the military personnel live in.
Yeah.
We had about 40 people.
That's cool.
And we had a NAB banker he spoke about all the ins and outs of the DOHAS loan and the grants.
Yeah.
Things like HPAS as well, like using it as part of your funds to complete or your deposit, because normally it is available post-settlement of the purchase.
Okay.
So there is a bit of a strategy on ways that you would bring that into.
So this is a sequence then of how you use these grants, but probably a bit more of a philosophical question, Ben. I imagine if you got soldiers at whatever rank they are, sort of engaged with building some sort of or having a better financial footprint and an attitude towards wealth creation, I imagine they're a lot more stable and focused and connected and therefore probably more capable for the work that they need to do, right? Like, so at a cultural level, it's probably really important.
Oh, it is, definitely from a cultural perspective, 100%. You know, if you are settled in your outside life, you're settled in your work life. So, yeah.
And this really is where, you know, a lot of these grants lends itself to happier and healthier and less stressed soldiers. You know, you can't fight on two fronts, right? If you got your sort of home sorted and financially you're sort of on your way using this sort of stuff and these incentives, it means you can sort of fight on the other front, which is your job in many ways, right? So,
exactly.
And I know that's a really important. You know, with particularly with recruitment and retention inside of the ADF, like, you know, getting people's home lives sorted and because, you know, people out there deploying and stuff and wherever they are in the world, it is quite a rigor. So if that's good, it means that your soldiers and sailors are there happier and they're doing a better job and are likely to hang around longer as well, which is really important.
That's it.
You know, you're 20 years in. Thanks for your service. It's good to see. You'll be there. You're the old bloke sort of sitting in the back room at some point still. Yeah,
still hanging around.
Yeah,
that's it.
So let's talk about HPAS, Kane. So what is HPAS? That's HPA. So what's it stand for?
Home Purchase Assistance Scheme.
Okay.
And we're basically looking at $17,000, kind of like the old school first home owners grant.
Yep.
It's a one-off opportunity. 17,000 tax, so we'll land on, once you're fully approved on your pay slip next, you'll get taxed and you might end up with, you know, 10 to 12,000 depending on your
tax rate.
You know, your rank and your tax rate. And generally there is, like we were saying before, qualifying criteria, and one of the criteria is obviously a contract of sale. So generally it's going to be a 30-day purchase or settlement period for the purchase. And the process isn't going to be, or the grant's not going to be available till post-purchase or post-settlement. So you generally to have it was part of my deposit on my very first property that I purchased. And I actually had it available at settlement by having a longer settlement period to negotiate that on the purchase of the property to then allow that admin process to and be on good terms with that chain of command to say, hey, boss, HPAS is part of my deposit. Can you help push it through?
So this is when you get a bit tactical with how you go about doing it. So you try and get a longer. So you got to. So once you get hey, I've signed a contract for a property, you might try and get a 60-day settlement on it.
Yeah.
So once they'll pay you as soon as you've got that. It doesn't have to settle.
Yeah, because you'll need to provide the contract of sale. So obviously they're not going to approve the grant, HPAS, until you've got that contract of sale. But you're not going to get the contract of sale, and if you until 30 days settlement, it's not going to be available in that time. So you have to push that settlement period longer to make that grant available, you know, for your funds to complete.
Yeah. Can you double dip? Can you get like the HPAS or the ADF based stuff, but then also get the standard stuff available to every Aussie?
Yeah. So that if you're entitled to it, you know, whether that's stamp duty concessions for a first home buyer, or if you're going to build any first home buyer grants there, you can pack as many grants into one.
So you get all the usual stuff, and then you get the ADF stuff on top of it. So another $17,000.
Yeah, so it's just about understanding those and squeezing them into the purchase.
So if you get that completely right, you get a first home buyer's grant, you get HPAS, you get stamp duty concessions, whatever, and that's you got to buy under a particular amount. I don't know what it is now.
Yeah,
like that's probably that could run into what? 50, 60 grand?
Yeah, and just talking about like DOHAS and HPAS alone, so we're going to use HPAS for our first purchase. We're going to move into the property and we've got maybe 8 years of qualifying for DOHAS. So we get the DOHAS loans, then all of a sudden we're getting the subsidised loan plus a little bit of funds to complete to help get into the property. Then we're going to have 12 months in our current posting in order to qualify for that. but maybe after 24 months you might get posted away from that area and retain that property as your first sort of investment in the portfolio. And all of a sudden, when you put a tenant in there, you've got the rent and the DOHAS subsidy coming in. The cash flow is a lot better on number one. So it's a good sort of, leg up into that first property into the portfolio.
So with the DOHAS, that's connected to the property, not to the individual. So you can have as many.
Well, it's connected to both the individual. You can't go get DOHAS on another purchase.
You're going to get on one.
One sort of. So you get it on your first purchase generally, and you get your DOHAS, and then you're living in it. Because depending on your core rank and position, like I was Ramey and a tradie, so we would post every 2 or 3 years, and if you get promoted within that, it might speed up that posting cycle. You might go from Townsville. Well, I personally went Victoria, Townsville, Sydney, Townsville, Perth.
And you buy each time?
Not each time.
Yeah.
But once you move away from that locality, if you've got DOHAS on a property, you can then put a tenant in that property, and the cash flow is obviously a lot better.
Because you keep the DOHAS on that particular first property.
Correct.
Yeah.
And then you might get posted to Sydney and get rent assistance because you don't own a property in Sydney.
Okay, so that's another one. As rent assistant is another grant or incentive. How does that work?
So that's where essentially the non-property owner, if you're just in defence, generally you'll start your career living on the barracks, but at some point in time, newer people in their career would live on the barracks. So they might say, hey, Benny, you've been in for long enough, you've been on the barracks. Here's some rent assistance. Go rent a place off barracks so we can free up some accommodation for newer members. And then, you get subsidised rent in whatever locality. So then it comes in part of that strategy piece is if I'm buying a property in Townsville and I've got DOHAS, I might want to move away from that locality so I can get that property rented and then get subsidised rent somewhere else. So
the rent vesting over here, you've still got your investment property over there, you can build up and
So
start.
Rent vesting can be another quite beneficial way to accelerate that portfolio and the cash flow. And if we were to put a figure on rent assistance, is it quite 50%?
It's about 50%. So it depends on your rank, your conditions, and where you are. Obviously, it costs more to rent in Sydney than it does in, say, Townsville. So you will have a higher ceiling. It basically works on the lines of you have a ceiling, and then defence will top up. It's gone just under 50% now. It's like 48%.
Okay.
So say in Sydney, at my rank as a major, your ceiling will probably be about 1,100. And
rent assistance a week.
So that's your ceiling. So you can rent in a place up to 1,100 a week, and defence will pay about half of that. Say 550.
Just ballpark.
Ballparking.
Yeah, we are where I live down in town. We had a commander of the Navy living there. It was a nice joint. He must have had some pretty good rent assistance. You see him popping up, right?
It's such a benefit for that the cash flow of your overall, because you're rent vesting, but you're rent vesting, at that next level because you've got subsidised rent, and then if you've done it right, you've got subsidy on your loan for that first one. Like you can really accelerate things here.
If I was in uniform, I'd be so up to my eyeballs gamifying this. So
and you need to gamify it because you can't, like Benny was saying, you can't just roll in and say, hey, boss, here's a contract of sale, I need all this approved. It just doesn't work like that. So you really need to think 3-6 months in advance, like, okay, I'm building my savings here, this is what I'm going to do, this is the plan, and when do I start pulling the trigger on the approval process to get everything lined up so I can start, house hunting. Yeah.
So in an ideal world, you get a posting, you're buying that place, you get your DOHAS, you live there for a couple of years, and then you'll get a new posting somewhere else. You'd move there, you keep that original one as an investment property with a tenant in there. You still got subsidisation on the mortgage under the DOHAS. Then you're getting rental assistance. So every night that blow on your dough means you can save a lot of money, build up a deposit, buy another investment
That's
property.
right, and this is probably forming into, there's a couple of segues we can go with our strategy piece here, but that's going to form it like the rent vestor in defence. Once you're getting rent assistance, you want to hold on to that. But if that instance we were just explaining, you're in Sydney getting rent assistance, if you post to Perth and you've got an investment over in Perth, there's a certain distance that it can't be within from the barracks that you're posted to, or you won't qualify for rent assistance in Perth.
They'll say go and use that property.
That's right. So you've got to be strategic with where you're buying your investment properties if you're going to choose the rent vesting path, you know. And then probably a good segue into Hepsi where if we were posting from Townsville to Sydney, they may choose to use HEPSI, which will cover the exit costs or the sale costs of the Townsville property to then purchase in Sydney, and they'll cover the reasonable, I think that's the word, isn't it? Reasonable expenses to purchase in Sydney. So all of a sudden you can go like for like with very little in and out costs, and with how clunky and expensive it is to transact on real estate, that's probably one of the less frequently used.
Oh, definitely less frequently, and that's probably the least well known as well too. I myself didn't realise until this year, speaking to someone at work who's used it, that HEPSI allows you, just as Kane said, reasonable expenses. You can use a buyer's agent to buy in your new location, and the cost for that buyer's agent is covered under HEPSI. That was something, we're talking about knowing about things. I've just said I've done 20 years. I literally found that out this year.
So they'll do all the work for you. That's great, right? Because it means you can keep doing your job and not be running around trying to find a new place.
Exactly.
And it comes back to the health and happiness of the family unit and making sure that. So use an example. So you got a place in Townsville. You posted there. You've bought it through Dohash. You're living in it. You're getting subsidised on the mortgage. You get posted down into Sydney. So you buy a house in Sydney. So the agency fee and up there in Townsville would get covered?
Yep.
Obviously, capital gains you would just need to pay. Oh, no, because it'd be capital gains free because it's your principal place of residence, so no worries whatsoever. You move into Sydney, there's going to be stamp duty in Sydney. So is that covered under HEPSI?
Yep.
Really? Up to a particular amount, or they just cover the lot? It'd probably be reasonable, I imagine. You'd look at the fine print.
Back to that reasonable too. You'd have to look at the fine print, and you'd have to make sure exactly what's covered.
What it is.
Yeah.
So essentially you can port yourself and your life down to Sydney and have your principal place of residence here without too much cash down.
Yeah, and you can still, with that too, you can still move to Sydney, qualify for RA while you are looking for this place, while you're going through the process of, selling the place in Townsville. So you could have DOAS on that, you can have a renter, you can have renters in there. You've got your rent assistance. So again, you have those minimal outlays, but you are looking to sell in Townsville and buy in Sydney. So you keep on. HEPSI's a cycle. Yeah. You have to
buy, sell
to keep those.
And that's why it's that own occupier property that you're. And I think this is where it then comes into the market that you're moving from and the market you're moving to, and then tying it in with a grant. So a good example might be you're posted to Adelaide and you're going to Townsville. If it was 2010, where we knew the Townsville market was very flat, the rent assistance of, if rent was $500 a week and we're getting $250 rent assistance, that probably far outweighs the growth that you would expect on that market at that point in time. Versus if it was in 2021, you might say, well, the market in Townsville is now turning, and we can see some of the data supports that. We might forgo our opportunity for rent assistance and buy in Townsville because we'd expect the growth in Townsville to well outperform that rent assistance. Jeez. So it's about knowing the market that you're leaving, because then you might say, well, Adelaide's going to outperform Townsville, so I'll keep my property in Adelaide and then get rent assistance in Townsville.
It's got to be so strategic with this and lining up the sequence. And if you don't know this, I reckon it's impossible. It sounds the challenge with it all, Kane, is like you can't have multiple objectives with it. You've either got to choose one, I think, where you just go, I'm focusing this as an owner-occupier strategy. I want to try and get the best outcome I can. And imagine people can just keep trading up their owner-occupied property if they do that well, right? And you can use this as a way to do it.
Yeah, and you can tap into equity as you're upgrading those and maybe extract equity for the next investment as well. So it doesn't have to all go equity into the next one.
So you can trade up, or you can keep it and you can pull money out. It's a really good way to do it. Or you can go, I'm really going to just concentrate on being a rentvestor and just buy really smart properties renting elsewhere. It's mind boggles.
It's about coming up with a strategy that suits you and your posting cycle and your unique situation. But also being flexible, that nothing's rigid forever either. Some people might core transfer and they'll say, I've had enough of being a diesel mechanic. I want to go be a rifleman, or I want to cross-service transfer to Air Force or whatever. It's about having that plan for now and then reviewing the plan, I guess.
So I sort of, from what little I know about how all this works, posting orders are pretty important. Sometimes they can be a bit sort of loose for a while. You really want to tighten that up, right? Because you can't do anything without that. Is that how it works, Ben?
You can't do anything without that. The DOHAS and the HPAS, because that is linked to your posting order and confirming that you are going to be in that location for the next 12 months to qualify. That's because that's part of the qualifying terms for those two grants. So that's something where your boss can come in handy. It can be a clunky, slow process. Posting orders generally come out in that sort of June to July period, but with different people, different circumstances, that can change. If you're a soldier, you need to speak to your chain of command. First your corporal will go up your way, and because they have the links into your career managers to chase that up for you.
How much time do you normally get before, say posting orders coming out before you actually get posted? You normally have a bit of time?
Yeah, it's usually that sort of June to July period. So they generally drop. Most of them drop. I think it was July this year, so early July. So you'll find out in early July. Say on. You're going to Sydney next year, so you have that time.
And then you get like 6 months to sort your stuff out.
Sort your life out.
Which is that's probably enough for people to work all this.
Yeah.
Do you see anyone who is like really like? Is there anyone who really across this and like super, property investors inside of the ADF? Do you come across them? Is it a thing? Is where people are growing and building big portfolios?
I would say it's not any more or less of a thing than outside of defence.
Okay.
I think property investing is something that people like obtain from. There's something that lights that I'm going to become an investor, and property is my path or chosen path to go with that. And then I guess within the defence side, it's just understanding and getting the your A team, I guess, to help maximise all these opportunities.
I was going to say, listening to some of the complexities of this, you probably need a pretty good accountant with all this as well, right? Like who understands,
yeah, definitely,
and stamp duty offsets and all this sort of stuff.
There's also the investor that's going to, as they get posted from Adelaide to Townsville, they're like, I don't care, I'm just going to keep building my portfolio and buy one in each location, and that's plenty of people out there do that. Then think of the capital gains exemption that you would get because it's an owner-occupier property. But if you've gone from owner-occupier to owner-occupier... It's going to
catch up eventually.
Right. That's right. Well, you just got to work it all out, and it's a bit of an accounting, not minefield, but...
You want to start in Townsville, build your career up, then count Townsville within, the 7 years or whatever as taxable...
Yeah, but if you've purchased in your next one, you can't claim it, you know what I mean? So that's where your accountant and your timeline, I guess, needs to be recorded and have the right knowledge on those discounts that you get.
Oh, okay. Well, I'm a lot more informed. That sounds like you need to know this if you can leverage it as effectively as possible. But what great incentives, right? Like it's brilliant.
Yeah, I think the couple of good points to take out of this is be prepared. Give yourself that time. Whether that's 3 months, 6 months. When you're thinking of buying, give yourself that little bit of time, that little bit of planning to think ahead of what you're going to do. Start the process. Start talking to your chain of command, talk to your friends, know what's happening. In line with that, have a strategy. Have what you want to do. We've talked about rent vestors. We've talked about owner occupiers. If you want to use the HEPC cycle, do that. Or if you want to be a rent vestor, you're going to be posting around a bit. Use your DOHAS loan. Use your renter in there, and then go on your RA. Keep posting around. You can keep investing exactly as Kane said. You can buy an investment property if it's 50 k's outside of your posted locality, or if it's in a completely different city.
Yeah.
And the last one I think I brought up briefly, and again I just want to keep stressing. I think it is best for first home buyers. Use someone like Kane, Discover Buyers Agents. He knows this process. He's been there. He's already spoken about. He's done this process. He's getting into that defence space. He knows how to. Not only does he know all these grants, he knows how to deal with real estate agents. They can be quite tricky. So he has that. It might be that extra bit of money up front, but if you go on HEPC, it's completely refunded. Or you are going to use HPAS. You don't necessarily have that little bit of extra incentive for your home loans. You do have that extra money to use someone like Kane if you're doing an owner-occupier. And if he can save you 10, 20, 30 grand on your home price, think about that over the life of the loan.
Yeah, and buying in the right place that's going up in value. And completely. I think the key thing for me would be, you can't just sit around and expect people to do this for you. You've got to own it yourself.
Exactly. Yeah.
And the greater accountability and interest you take in this, the better outcome you're going to get. But that doesn't mean you've got to do it in a bubble, right? There's people out there to help you.
Yeah.
Like people like Kane, or to your point, making sure your OC actually is there to be an enabler rather than someone that's hindering the process. So, you've got to get it right. But, that's you've broken that down really well, guys. What's this I hear about property management with you guys these days? What's going on there?
Yeah, so
newsflash.
Hot off the press. It's that hot that we haven't actually built the website out yet, but we've got Discover Properties launching this month, and it's going to be our property management for Queensland. So if there's any non-military still listening at this point, it's not just for a military personnel, but property management business for investors by investors. So a key part of our business model is we feel that when a tenant pays their rent to their landlord, it shouldn't sit in the property manager's trust account for a month. It should, and we pay it directly to that landlord, less expenses. So they get their rent offsetting their mortgage the day the tenant pays it, not waiting to the end of month for the.
That's pretty cool. I have to get you on the Smart Property Investment Show. You tell me a little bit more about it.
Yeah, so big plans for it, but at the moment, Queensland only. If you're interested, just text PM for property management to myself, 0475 060 945, and we'll put you on our list. And it's I think it's critical, especially for that property investor that has a mortgage that wants to, and especially if they've got interest-only loans with offset accounts and want to improve the cash flow of their portfolio, getting it in that offset account ASAP is very
I think it's really good. And we'll have a chat about it on the Smart Property Investment Show, but you're absolutely right. I don't want my rent money sitting in some real estate agent's trust account when it could be sitting in my offset paying less interest. Like, it's just a no-brainer for it. But, mate, thanks for coming in, Ben. I really enjoyed the chat. Nice to meet you. It sounds like you really care, right? Which is good.
There is, a lot of soldiers not massive fans of officers, but there are a few of us out there. There's plenty of us out there. Yeah, we're not too bad. We're just guys like you yourself.
If I could just jump in and say, next time, could you have a shave and fix that collar?
Yeah, mate. That's Darwin talk here. We're not doing that.
Nice one. Thanks, Ben. And Kane, good to catch up, mate.
Excellent.
Good to see you. And we'll chat again soon. What's your website for your business, for Discover?
Yeah, so discoverbuyersagency.com.au. Jump on, submit a web form, have a booking for a chat, or just reach out on 0475 060 945.
So the key thing is that if you're in the military and you're tuning into this, you're going to be dealing with someone who's been there, done that, knows it.
Yeah. That's going to help you strategise that minefield that we've just talked about the last 40 minutes.
Brilliant. Nice one. Thanks for tuning in, everyone. I hope you enjoyed that. We'll see you again next time. Until then, bye-bye.
The information featured in this podcast is general in nature and does not take into consideration your financial situation or individual needs and should not be relied upon. Before making any investment, insurance, tax, property or financial planning decision, you should consult a licensed professional who can advise whether your decision is appropriate for you. Guests appearing on this podcast may have a commercial relationship with the companies mentioned.